The wind tore across the frozen cliffs like a living thing, slamming against Ronan Vay's face as he clawed through the snow. His breath came in ragged gasps, fogging the visor of his helmet, but he didn't slow. Something in the distance had caught his attention, an almost human-like cry, sharp and trembling, cutting through the roar of the storm. He froze, straining to hear it again. There it was, small, desperate, and full of fear. Ronan's heart tightened. He had survived wars on half a dozen planets, watched men die for nothing, and walked through firestorms and collapsing buildings, but this sound pulled something raw from inside him. Without a second thought, he sprinted toward the source, snow up to his knees. Each step was a battle against the wind, against the icy slick beneath his boots. There, half buried in a frozen crevice, he saw it, a tiny dragon hatchling no bigger than his forearm, trembling and covered in ice. Its scales flickered with strange, pale colors that seemed to shift like liquid light, reflecting the gray sky. Its wings were too small, folded awkwardly, and it gave out a weak hiss as it tried to lift itself. The creature's golden eyes locked onto his, wide with terror and confusion. Ronan dropped to one knee. He didn't reach for a weapon. The hatchling wasn't a threat. "Hey, little one," he said, his voice rough from cold and exhaustion. "I'm not going to hurt you." The hatchling hissed again, claws scraping the ice, and a small spurt of frost shot from its nostrils. It had every right to fear him, but Ronan's steady calm, born of years facing impossible odds, kept him from flinching. He moved slowly, hands open, scraping away the ice. Every second was a gamble. The wind could topple him off the cliff at any moment, but he refused to leave it behind. Finally, with a grunt and a careful tug, he freed the hatchling. It shivered violently in his hands, then unexpectedly curled against his chest. A flicker of warmth shot through him, and he felt an unexplainable bond. The creature was alive, yes, but more than that, it seemed intelligent, studying him as much as he studied it. Suddenly, a shadow passed over the cliff's edge, massive and swift. Ronan's gut clenched. He turned just in time to see a dragon swoop low, its scales dark and glimmering even under the storm clouds. Its wings spanned wider than any creature he had ever seen. It didn't roar, didn't attack. It circled, measuring him, assessing him. The hatchling stiffened, hissing and wriggling, wings trembling. Ronan held it tighter, instinct taking over. "Calm," he muttered. "We're okay." But even he knew that wasn't certain. Every story he'd ever heard of dragons ended in fire and death. Yet this one hovered, silent and deliberate, watching, not striking. It was almost as if it was waiting. He backed toward a shallow ledge, careful not to lose footing, the hatchling clinging to him. The snow was deep and the ice brittle, but Ronan's hands were steady. He glanced at the creature again. Its tiny chest rose and fell rapidly, but there was a spark in its eyes, a spark of trust. He smiled, grim but genuine. "We'll get through this. I promise." A sudden crack of ice beneath him made him jump, slipping just a little. The hatchling let out a frightened squeak and Ronan caught himself, teeth gritted. In the chaos, he realized something. The dragon above wasn't attacking, but it wasn't leaving either. Its gaze seemed intelligent, almost calculating. And then the pattern shifted. The dragon tilted its head, eyes glowing faintly in the storm, and for a heartbeat, it looked like it was speaking without words. The wind roared louder, snow blinding him. He hugged the hatchling tighter, scanning the horizon. There was no path down, no clear way to safety. Just the storm, the ice, and the shadow of something far bigger than him, a creature whose power and intent he could not guess. And then, without warning, the massive dragon let out a sound that wasn't a roar, not exactly. It was melodic, almost mournful, echoing across the frozen cliffs. The hatchling stiffened, wings trembling violently but didn't try to bite. Ronan froze too. The sound carried meaning but he couldn't understand it. It was a warning, a test, or something else entirely. Ronan's mind raced. He could retreat, let the hatchling go, save himself, but he couldn't. Not after seeing it struggle in the ice. Not after hearing that cry. His hands dug into the snow, anchoring himself against the gale. He took a deep breath and whispered, "We face it together. Whatever happens, we survive." The mother dragon's eyes glimmered again, wider now, scanning him with uncanny intelligence. Its shadow stretched across the ice like a moving storm, immense and terrifying. For the first time, Ronan felt the weight of something larger than life. Something that could kill him in a heartbeat, or perhaps, something that might recognize him as more than prey. And then it turned slightly, wings slicing the air with a sound like thunder, and dove straight toward a nearby ridge, not at him but toward something behind the cliff. The hatchling let out a squeal of alarm and Ronan froze, heart hammering. Whatever it was chasing, or whatever plan it had, he knew their next move would define all of their fates. He tightened his grip on the hatchling. The storm screamed around them. And from the shadow of the cliff, he realized, survival was only the beginning. Ronan didn't wait for the storm to ease. Snow lashed at his visor, biting through the thin layers of his jacket, but he had no choice. The hatchling in his arms shivered violently, its tiny body quivering with cold and fear. He needed shelter, a place where the wind couldn't reach them, and fast. Ahead, half buried in snow, he spotted the remnants of a mining outpost, crumbling metal walls, jagged beams sticking out at odd angles, but it was better than nothing. He stumbled through the deep snow, the hatchling gripping his sleeve with surprisingly strong claws. Its eyes glowed faintly, almost as if it were drawing warmth from him, but he knew they needed real protection. Every step was a battle. The ice underfoot was slick and hidden fissures threatened to swallow him whole. At one point, a crack opened beneath his boot, sending a spike of pain up his leg, but he pushed on. He had survived worse, and he refused to fail this small creature. Inside the outpost, Ronan set the hatchling down and started scavenging what little supplies remained. He ripped a tattered blanket from a corner, wrapping it around the creature. It hissed at first but then relaxed against him. For a moment, the storm outside softened, and he allowed himself a brief smile. The hatchling was alive, safe for now, and it had accepted him. A small victory but precious. Then came the tremors. At first, they were subtle, barely noticeable under the roar of the wind. But the metal beams of the outpost groaned and shifted, and dust fell from the ceiling. Ronan's instincts kicked in. He crouched low, placing the hatchling behind a support beam. The ground vibrated beneath him as if something massive was moving nearby. His mind raced. In all his years of battle, he had learned one truth: the bigger the tremor, the deadlier the threat. He peered through a broken window. Shadows moved across the snow outside, quick, erratic shapes darting between jagged rocks. Not the mother dragon, something smaller, faster, and far more numerous. Alien predators, their eyes glowing like the hatchlings, were circling, hunting. They must have been drawn to the light or the movement. Ronan's chest tightened. He could fight them, yes, but the hatchling was unarmed, unprepared. Every wrong move could mean death. Thinking fast, he scavenged metal scraps and wires from the outpost. Using ingenuity born from years of surviving impossible odds, he rigged simple traps and barriers. One wire snared a jagged piece of metal, another created a makeshift alarm system. When the predators crept too close, they would trigger noise and movement, buying Ronan precious seconds. The first predator reached the doorway, a hulking creature with jagged claws and serrated teeth. It froze as the wire snapped, a metal plate clanging loudly. Startled, it recoiled, giving Ronan the chance to leap forward with a scrap of pipe. He struck quickly, a precise, calculated hit that sent it stumbling. The hatchling chirped, a tiny high-pitched note of relief, and pressed closer to him. That small sound made him grin even in the middle of danger. A micro payoff, a moment of connection and hope amidst the chaos. But the predators were persistent. One lunged from the shadows and Ronan barely dodged, scraping his shoulder against a sharp beam. Pain flared, but adrenaline kept him moving. He slammed a metal door shut behind him, trapping two of the creatures outside. The remaining ones hesitated, circling warily, giving him a brief respite. He grabbed the hatchling, holding it close, whispering, "We're not done yet. Stay calm. Trust me." Then, above the din of the storm and the alien growls, a sound stopped him cold. A massive shadow cut across the snow outside. He froze, heart hammering. The mother dragon was back, enormous and impossibly beautiful, its wings slicing the storm with power. Its scales glinted even in the gray light, a kaleidoscope of color that made the predators scatter in fear. The hatchling's tiny body stiffened, wings quivering, but it didn't run. Ronan realized something. The mother wasn't attacking him, yet. It hovered silently, eyes locking onto his with uncanny intelligence. Ronan had faced death many times, but this was different. This was raw, immediate danger, but layered with something he couldn't predict. The dragon was judging him. His decisions in the next moments could mean survival or annihilation, not just for himself but for the hatchling. He took a slow, careful step forward, keeping the creature in his arms, and tried to make his posture calm, non-threatening. He had to show courage, yes, but also respect. The wind shifted again, stronger, driving snow into his face. He shielded the hatchling with his body, scanning the surroundings. The predators had retreated, but the tremors didn't stop. Ronan realized the mountain itself was unstable, threatening collapse at any moment. He needed a plan. If they stayed here they might survive the immediate attack, but the environment itself could kill them. He scanned the outpost for higher ground, a safer place to hold off threats. There, a narrow ledge above the main structure caught his eye. Risky, yes, but it offered vantage and protection. "We move up," he said softly to the hatchling as if it could understand. It chirped again, almost in agreement. Gathering every ounce of strength he climbed, muscles burning, heart racing. One misstep could send them tumbling into the ice below. As they reached the ledge, Ronan paused to catch his breath, eyes sweeping the storm. The mother dragon hovered nearby, wings folded slightly, watching him with an expression that was almost curiosity. The hatchling nestled against his chest, trembling but alive. Ronan felt a surge of determination. Whatever came next, he would protect this creature. He would survive. And then the ground beneath the outpost shuddered violently, sending metal beams crashing down. A loud, cracking sound echoed through the cliffs. A fissure was opening. From the shadow of the storm, the mother dragon let out a low, resonant call. The predators hissed, retreating, but Ronan's gaze shifted downward. The ice beneath them was beginning to split. He tightened his grip on the hatchling. The storm raged louder, the shadows grew darker, and the mother dragon's call echoed like a warning. Ronan realized with a chill that the true danger was only beginning, and that their next move could decide life or death for all of them. Ronan's boots slipped against the icy ledge as he peered down at the fissure opening beneath the outpost. Snow and shards of ice tumbled into the darkness, the sound echoing like distant gunfire. The hatchling whimpered softly against his chest, wings fluttering in fear. He hugged it closer, murmuring, "Stay calm, little one. We'll figure this out." His mind raced, calculating risks, paths, and possibilities. Every choice now could be life or death, not just for him but for the fragile creature he had sworn to protect. The storm had not abated. Snow whipped sideways across the cliff, reducing visibility to almost nothing. Shadows danced in the wind, small predators creeping along the edges, hesitant after the mother dragon's previous display. The giant dragon hovered nearby, wings slicing through the white haze, but still at a cautious distance. Ronan's gut told him this was a test. Every moment of hesitation could trigger an attack, or a lesson he wasn't ready for. He scanned the crumbling outpost for anything useful, anything that could give them an advantage. That's when he noticed it, faint, glowing markings on one of the walls, partially buried under snow and ice. At first he thought it was frost reflecting the weak light, but the patterns were too deliberate, too structured. Carefully he brushed away layers of ice. Alien glyphs, intricate and geometric, ran across the wall. And there, carved into a metal panel beneath the markings, was a small recording device, still active, its faint hum audible through the storm. Ronan's eyes widened. He knelt, careful not to slip, and activated it. A holographic display flickered to life, projecting a glowing image of a massive dragon. Its scales shimmered with impossible colors, its eyes intelligent and calculating. Symbols he didn't understand pulsed around it. Then came the voice, deep, resonant, and oddly musical. It wasn't words he could comprehend, but the tone carried meaning: warning, sorrow, recognition. He glanced down at the hatchling, whose eyes glowed faintly in response to the projection. It was then that the realization hit him. This hatchling was not ordinary. Its species was rare, possibly endangered. The mother dragon hovering outside was not just a guardian, she was tracking it, assessing Ronan, and judging whether he was worthy. The stakes had just escalated. Saving the hatchling wasn't a simple act of compassion anymore, it was a challenge against intelligence, power, and ancient instinct. Ronan took a deep breath, forcing himself to focus. He studied the markings more closely. They weren't just decorative, they depicted dragons and humans interacting, communicating, even cooperating. Could this species recognize intelligent humans? Could the mother be testing him, sensing his courage and morality? Every story he had ever heard of dragons ended in death, yet here he was, alive, holding a hatchling that clearly trusted him. He realized that survival alone wouldn't be enough. He had to prove himself worthy. The wind howled outside, and the mother dragon's shadow passed over him again. She circled the fissure, eyes locked onto Ronan, wings slicing the air with a sound like thunder. He could feel her power, her judgment. Every muscle in his body tensed. The predators, sensing her presence, hesitated, then retreated back into the storm. He had a brief window. He needed to act now. Ronan scanned the ledge. There was a narrow path leading up toward a higher cliff, partially shielded by jagged rocks. It would be dangerous, but it offered a better vantage and more protection. He looked down at the hatchling. Its small claws clung to his jacket, wings trembling. He whispered, "We climb. Step by step. Trust me." The creature chirped softly, almost as if it understood. He began moving, carefully placing each foot on the slippery ice. A crack echoed beneath his boot, thin, treacherous ice over a deep crevice. He froze, heart pounding, then shifted his weight, testing each step before committing. The hatchling wriggled slightly, claws gripping his chest. He murmured, "Almost there. Just a little further." Adrenaline surged, sharpening his focus. Every step forward was a calculated risk. Halfway up the ledge, the mother dragon let out a low, resonant call. It wasn't threatening, not yet, but it vibrated through the air in a way that made his teeth ache. The hatchling stiffened, wings fluttering, and for a moment Ronan feared it would panic. Instead, it looked up at him, eyes glowing, and pressed closer. A small, almost imperceptible payoff: trust. The creature believed in him, and that belief gave him strength. Then came the unexpected twist. A section of the ledge crumbled under his weight, sending a cloud of snow and ice tumbling down the cliffside. He stumbled but managed to catch himself, gripping a jagged rock. The hatchling squeaked, clinging tightly. Below, the fissure yawned wider, a dark abyss threatening to swallow everything. The mother dragon's wings beat powerfully, stirring the snow into a blinding whirlwind, and for a heartbeat, it looked like she might attack, or test him in another way. Ronan froze, calculating. If he moved too fast he could fall. Too slow, and the environment or the predators could strike. His eyes scanned the wall with the alien glyphs. Maybe the dragons had left clues here. Symbols showing how to navigate this terrain, how to survive, how to communicate. He memorized the shapes, the patterns, committing them to instinct. Knowledge, courage, and timing, they were his weapons. With a deep exhale, he adjusted his stance, gripping the hatchling firmly, and leapt toward a stable rock protrusion. Ice cracked beneath him, but he landed safely. Step by step, inch by inch, he climbed higher, the mother dragon following silently, her eyes never leaving him. He realized that every calculated action, every choice he made, was being observed. Survival alone wouldn't satisfy her. He needed to prove intelligence, empathy, and courage. As he reached a narrow outcrop, he paused to catch his breath, heart racing. The hatchling chirped softly, wings fluttering, but no longer panicked. Ronan allowed himself a brief smile, another micro payoff. They were alive, moving forward, and the bond between them had strengthened. But the storm was relentless, the mountain unstable, and the mother dragon still watching. And then, from the swirling snow below, came a distant, echoing sound, deep, rhythmic, and unfamiliar. Not the storm. Not the predators. Something else. Something far larger than the mother dragon. Ronan's blood ran cold. Whatever it was moving toward them, drawn by the hatchling, or perhaps by him. The storm roared louder, and the mother dragon's wings beat faster, slicing through the air as if preparing for what was coming. Ronan tightened his grip on the hatchling. His mind raced, knowing instinctively that their next move would change everything. Survival was no longer just about endurance. It was about understanding, strategy, and courage on a scale he had never faced. The shadow of the storm shifted, and in the swirl of white, the larger presence grew closer. Ronan's heart pounded, his muscles tensed, and the hatchling's glow pulsed against his chest. Whatever was coming next, he knew one thing: the real test had only just begun. Ronan's breath came in ragged bursts as he pressed the hatchling closer to his chest. The snow whipped across the cliff, a blinding wall of white, but he could sense the danger before he saw it. The ground trembled beneath his boots, subtle at first, then violently, as if the mountain itself was alive. His instincts screamed. Something massive was approaching, bigger than the mother dragon, bigger than anything he had ever faced. And this time it wasn't alone. From the storm's fury, shadows emerged. Alien hunters, armed with sleek, deadly weapons, had tracked the hatchling. Their eyes glowed red beneath helmets designed to see through blizzards. They moved with mechanical precision, cutting through the snow toward him, undeterred by the mother dragon hovering overhead. Ronan's heart sank, but he didn't falter. He had faced death countless times in his life, and the rule was simple: hesitate and you were dead. He would not fail this hatchling. Stay calm, he muttered under his breath. Focus. His fingers brushed the hatchling's glowing scales, feeling a faint warmth, a pulse of life that reminded him what was at stake. He scanned the ledge. The terrain was narrow and unstable, but he had prepared traps. Metal scraps rigged with wires, jagged beams set to trip anything heavy. His mind raced, calculating angles and timing. Every step, every sound mattered. The first hunter appeared at the ridge below. Ronan held his position, crouched behind a jagged rock. He tugged on one of the wires. A clanging metal trap went off, sending the hunter stumbling backward. A small, victorious grin crossed Ronan's face. The hatchling chirped, wings flaring as if celebrating with him. A micro payoff, but fleeting. The hunters were relentless and the cliff was unforgiving. Then came the unexpected. The mother dragon dove, her massive wings slicing the snow into a violent spiral. At first Ronan's heart leapt in fear. Her shadow covered him, immense and terrifying. But she didn't attack him. Instead she targeted the hunters. With astonishing precision she struck, knocking two of them into the snow, their weapons clattering uselessly. Ronan's jaw tightened. He had seen dragons in combat simulations before, but nothing could prepare a human for this kind of raw, intelligent power. Yet he also realized this was a chance. If he acted wisely, the dragon would give him cover. He bolted, gripping the hatchling tightly, moving across the ledge toward a more stable outcropping. The snow was deep, the ice slick, but he kept his focus razor-sharp. One misstep and they would plunge into the abyss below. He leapt over a fissure just as another hunter fired a plasma bolt. The shot sizzled past, melting snow at his feet. The hatchling whimpered but didn't panic. Ronan's heart surged with determination. He was fast, calculating, alive, and he had the courage to act where others would freeze. The hunters regrouped, flanking him from both sides, weapons raised. Ronan's eyes darted to the mother dragon above. She hovered, massive wings beating the air, letting out a low, resonant growl. He understood, it was an opportunity, a moment to strike with precision. He glanced at the hatchling. Its eyes glowed brighter, and faint sparks of energy leapt from its tiny claws. The creature was more than it seemed. Its bond with him, fragile yet real, had awakened something inside it. Ronan seized the moment. Using a combination of traps, handholds, and clever feints, he led the hunters into a narrow choke point. One tripped over a metal beam, another was blinded by snow stirred by the mother dragon's wings. A well-aimed swing of a salvaged pipe sent one sprawling, and Ronan kicked another into the abyss below. Each calculated move was precise, each action dependent on his courage and quick thinking. The hatchling chirped again, wings flaring as if cheering him on. Another micro payoff, a reminder that even in the heart of chaos, small victories mattered. Then, just as the last hunter aimed a shot, the mother dragon struck again. Lightning fast, she unleashed a torrent of shimmering energy, knocking the weapon aside and sending the hunter tumbling into the snow. Ronan's heart pounded. Together, human and dragon, they had turned the tide. The hunters were defeated, retreating into the storm, their pursuit broken, for now. Ronan sank to his knees, the hatchling pressing against his chest. His arms were scraped, bruised, and bleeding from the icy debris, but he didn't care. They were alive. They had survived impossible odds together. The mother dragon landed nearby, wings folding, massive eyes fixed on him. She lowered her head slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement, recognition. Ronan understood, she had judged him and found him worthy. But even as he exhaled in relief, the wind howled around them, carrying a new sound. A low rumble, deeper and heavier than the mother dragon, echoing through the mountains. Ronan's stomach tightened. Whatever it was coming. And it was far larger than anything he had faced so far. He looked at the hatchling, small but defiant against the storm, glowing faintly in his arms. "We're not done," he whispered, voice steady despite exhaustion. The creature chirped in response as if agreeing. Ronan's mind raced with strategy, anticipation, and resolve. He had survived battlefields, storms, and predators, but this was something different. He was no longer just protecting the hatchling from hunters or the storm. He was standing at the threshold of something monumental, facing challenges that would test not just strength but intelligence, courage, and heart. The mother dragon's wings beat once, twice, slicing the air, stirring the snow. She hovered between him and the approaching threat, a protective barrier but also a silent warning. Ronan tightened his grip on the hatchling. Every muscle, every thought, every instinct was focused on survival and protecting this small, extraordinary life. And then in the swirling snow he caught movement, massive, deliberate, and approaching fast. The rumble grew louder, shaking the cliff. The mother dragon's eyes sharpened, wings flaring. Ronan realized with a surge of adrenaline that this was no longer a simple fight. The true danger, the impossible, the extraordinary, was about to arrive. He hugged the hatchling close, heart racing, mind sharp. Survival, courage, and intelligence had brought him this far. Now, everything he had learned, every risk he had taken, every decision he had made, would be tested to the limit. The storm roared, the shadows deepened, and the massive presence drew closer. Ronan took a deep breath, whispered to the hatchling and readied himself. Whatever came next, they would face it together. And he knew deep down that the next moment could change everything. Ronan hugged the hatchling tighter as the rumble beneath the cliff grew louder. Snow whipped around him in blinding sheets, and the mother dragon's massive wings beat the wind into a furious howl. He could feel the vibration of something enormous moving toward them, shaking the ice beneath his boots. The hatchling glowed faintly against his chest, wings fluttering, a tiny beacon of life and resilience. He swallowed his fear, forcing his mind to focus. This was not just survival anymore. This was proving that a human's courage, intelligence, and heart could face the impossible. Through the storm, a massive shape emerged. Its scales were darker than obsidian, jagged and sharp, and its eyes burned like molten gold. The creature's size dwarfed even the mother dragon. Every movement made the ice tremble. It was no ordinary predator. It radiated power, intelligence, and an ancient presence, the kind that could flatten mountains if it chose. Ronan's pulse raced. His training, his instincts, all screamed to run, but the hatchling was in his arms. He could not leave it. The mother dragon let out a low, resonant call that vibrated through the storm. She positioned herself between them and the massive creature, wings spread wide. Ronan understood the message, trust but prepare. He nodded to the hatchling, whispering, "We're in this together." The hatchling chirped, almost defiantly, and a tiny spark of light leapt from its scales. The enormous creature paused, surveying the scene. Its gaze swept over the mother dragon, the hatchling, and finally landed on Ronan. For a heartbeat, time seemed to freeze. Then it let out a sound that was not a roar, but a rumbling, resonant tone that seemed to communicate something. Anger? Curiosity? Challenge? Ronan had no idea, but he could feel the weight of its intelligence. This was a test far beyond brute force. Instinctively he shifted, moving to stand taller, chest forward, arms steady. He wasn't armed, but he had something more. Experience, courage, and quick thinking. He scanned the ledge, ice, rocks, debris, anything he could use. His mind raced through possibilities. He spotted a jagged outcrop above the massive creature. If he could lure it beneath, the terrain might work in their favor. He nodded to the mother dragon with a subtle gesture. She tilted her massive head, understanding. Ronan moved carefully, one step at a time, positioning the hatchling in a way that kept it safe against his chest. The enormous creature followed, slow and deliberate, every movement shaking the ice. Ronan's heart pounded, but his mind was calm. He whispered to the hatchling, "Trust me. We can do this." The creature's tiny claws flexed in response, almost as if it understood. When the massive dragon lunged forward, Ronan triggered his trap. An improvised net of metal scraps and wires stretched across the ledge. The creature crashed into it, roaring but not without struggle. The mother dragon swooped in, wings striking powerfully, forcing it back just enough to keep it contained. Ronan used the moment, sprinting along the ledge with the hatchling clutched tightly, leading them toward the safer outcrop. Every movement was calculated, every decision critical. As they reached stable ground, the mother dragon landed beside him, wings folding, eyes fixed on the hatchling. The enormous creature struggled against the trap, but the mother's presence dominated it. Ronan realized something profound. The mother dragon wasn't just protecting her child, she had been testing him, assessing whether a human could rise to the challenge, could act with intelligence, courage, and compassion. He had passed. Ronan exhaled, heart pounding, and looked down at the hatchling. Its small wings flared once, and it chirped softly, pressing against him. A warm pulse of light spread through its scales, faint but unmistakable. The creature had recognized him as protector, as ally. Micro payoff, trust rewarded, bond forged. He smiled, exhaustion and relief flooding him. The mother dragon nudged the hatchling gently with her snout, wings flickering, then turned her massive head toward Ronan. She lowered her gaze, almost reverently, and a low hum vibrated from her throat. Ronan understood instinctively, he had earned her respect. The impossible odds had been faced and overcome, not by strength alone, but by courage, intelligence, and the human heart. Then, above the storm, something caught his eye, a faint glimmer of light on the horizon. It pulsed rhythmically, almost like a signal. The mother dragon stiffened, and the hatchling chirped, eyes wide. Ronan's chest tightened. Whatever had been moving beneath the ice before, whatever force had been drawn to them, it was not finished. This was bigger than the storm, bigger than the hunters, bigger than anything he had faced today. He stood, gripping the hatchling firmly. "We've survived this," he murmured, but our journey isn't over. The hatchling chirped in response, wings flaring, glowing brighter. The mother dragon roared softly, a warning, a promise, and then took to the sky, circling above them like a sentinel. Ronan's mind raced with possibilities. The glowing pulse on the horizon, the ancient intelligence of the mother dragon, the hatchling's strange powers, it was a mystery far larger than a single survival story. He realized that protecting the hatchling was just the beginning. There was a world out there, strange and dangerous, waiting to challenge him again. He looked down at the tiny dragon, alive and trusting in his arms, and smiled. "We'll face it all together," he said. The hatchling chirped, and for the first time since the storm began, the snow seemed less threatening, less wild. They had survived impossible odds. They had proven something: humans could rise above fear, above danger, above even the unknown. Ronan took a deep breath, scanning the horizon. The storm had not ended, the mountains still groaned, but for now they were alive. Courage, intelligence, and heart had carried them through. The mother dragon hovered, eyes sharp and vigilant, and the hatchling nestled against him, warm and glowing. It was a moment of triumph, but also a promise of the challenges yet to come. A distant, rhythmic pulse of light beat again on the horizon, and Ronan's eyes narrowed. Whatever lay ahead, he knew it would test them even further. He tightened his grip on the hatchling. "Ready for the next adventure?" he whispered. The tiny creature chirped, wings fluttering, and the mother dragon spread her wings, lifting off with a graceful sweep. Ronan stepped forward onto the ledge, eyes fixed on the glowing horizon. The story was not over. The human heart, unyielding, courageous, and compassionate, had shone brightly today, but the adventure, the true test, was just beginning.